We are now taking you live to the Parliament of Malawi, where the Minister of Finance, Simplex Chichara is presenting the highly anticipated 2025-2026 national budget. The Minister of Finance is expected to outline the government's spending priorities, revenue projections, and strategic initiatives aimed at driving economic growth and development. Stay tuned for live updates from Parliament as the Minister of Finance presents the 2025-2026 national budget, outlining the government's vision for Malawi's economic future.
Growth has been rising from minus 1.6% in 2020 to 3.8% in 2024, which is still lower than the pre-pandemic growth targets. Madam Speaker, the domestic performance is a reflection of the global economic trends. Specifically, Madam Speaker, Malawi's economy registered a slow growth of 0.8% in 2020 due to COVID-19 restrictions, which limited economic activities across the globe. Economic growth, Madam Speaker, started recovering in 2021 with a growth of 4.6% before dropping again to 0.9% in 2022. The slowdown, Madam Speaker, in growth was due to the Russian-Ukraine war, which limited the supply of strategic commodities such as fertilizers, petroleum, gas, and pharmaceuticals. Madam Speaker, in addition to Cyclone Anna, caused the destruction of Kapchira power station, which significantly reduced the power supply required for cyclical growth in industries, service sector, and so many SMEs with a heavy dependence on steady power supply. Madam Speaker, in recent years, the country registered a growth of 1.9 and 1.8% in 2023 and 2024, respectively, due to cyclones such as Freddy and El Nino weather-related conditions, which reduced agricultural production. The government therefore remains hopeful that the economy will grow at 3.2% in 2025, owing to the continued good rainfall and positive contributions from expected high investments in agriculture, tourism, and mining sectors. Madam Speaker, the slowdown in growth resulted in trade imbalances, which led to the misalignment between the Malawi kwacha and major trading currencies. This, Madam Speaker, resulted in the government taking a painful decision to realign the kwacha by 25% in May 2022 and 44% in November 2023. Despite these collective measures, Madam Speaker, the government is saddened by the behavior of unpatriotic Malawians who are trading the dollar at a higher than official exchange rate, thereby fueling speculative behavior in an official market for foreign currency. Madam Speaker, it is this unscrupulous conduct plus the other economic challenges that I have highlighted above that are leading to the current high cost of living. This far, Madam Speaker, annual coverage inflation has moved from 28.8% in 2023 to 32.3% in 2024. However, Madam Speaker, the performance in commodity prices is expected to ease in the short to medium term, with an annual average inflation projected at 24% in 2025, owing to the planned significant investments in productive sectors of the economy, which I will outline in details later. Monetary policy. Madam Speaker, the government is implementing monetary policies that are complemented by fiscal measures to contain inflationary pressures. In this regard, Madam Speaker, the Reserve Bank of Malawi maintained the policy rate at 26% in January 2025. The RBM will continue to monitor economic developments and manage their impact on the prices of goods and services. However, Madam Speaker, the Reserve Bank is working with commercial banks to duly bound to complement demand management approach with the incentive approach to allow private sector to produce and export. Foreign exchange reserves. Madam Speaker, To this date, the imbalances in foreign exchange reserves remain significant. However, the economy's foreign exchange reserves showed improvement between December 2024 and January 2025. To increase foreign exchange reserves, Madam Speaker, government is implementing measures to incentivize productivity, generate foreign exchange, and seal the loopholes in the foreign exchange management. Madam Speaker, government is also working with various stakeholders to implement financial sector reforms and provide incentives for the real sector. With these measures, Madam Speaker, I wish to assure this August House that the economy's official reserves are expected to improve over the short to medium term. Madam Speaker, Malawi has to produce and export, protect the foreign exchange reserves it generates against the malpractices of the very unpatriotic and speculative businesses that only aim at reaping and destroying our economy for their riches at the expense of Malawians. Madam Speaker, let me make an emphasis here that very soon, government through my ministry will actually announce very strict measures on how we manage foreign exchange in this country, including that imports in this country should be backed by TT copies originated in this country to curb this malpractice that has robbed Malawi the much-needed foreign exchange. Madam Speaker, total public debt stock and management. Madam Speaker, as of September 2024, public debt stood at 16.19 trillion, representing 86.4% of the GDP, which is a total extended debt reached 7.39 trillion, while domestic, let me take this one again, Madam Speaker. As of September 2024, public debt stood at 16.19 trillion, representing 86.4% of our GDP, of which a total external debt reached 7.39 trillion, while domestic debt amounted to 8.79 trillion. Through physical consolidation and debt restructuring, Madam Speaker, government has demonstrated remarkable effort to ensure the country's public debt becomes sustainable. Government, in principle, has reached agreements with all official bilateral creditors, and it is still negotiating with commercial creditors to restructure debt even more. Madam Speaker, once the negotiations are completed, the initiative will ease the pressure on foreign exchange and provide physical space necessary for productive investment. Madam Speaker, the most ideal way of dealing with the unsustainable debt is by enhancing the country's domestic revenue mobilization to cover government expenditure without resources to further borrowing, a situation which has not been attained due to the many shocks that this country has experienced and affected the economic performance negatively. Madam Speaker, you will note that honourable members, that a significant proportion of this budget I'm about to present is to cater for interest bill payment on past consumption, on salaries and wages and pensions, budget lines which are mandatory and cannot be reduced. Madam Speaker, to tame the growing debt, government has stepped up its efforts to strengthen debt and cash management. Government has therefore and will continue to contract concessional loans, targeting borrowing to fund projects in the priority sectors, particularly leveraging on alternative and innovative financing. We will ensure that our borrowing targets productive areas to maximize the benefits on our economy. Some of the key measures to contain public debt include the following, Madam Speaker. Commitment controls to contain arrears and limiting issuers of grantees. Madam Speaker, I am pleased this afternoon to inform the August House that government has developed a framework to assess and manage grantees on lending and direct borrowing by state-owned enterprises. Honourable members might wish to note, Madam Speaker, that in the 2024-25 financial year, government has not contracted any non-concessional external loan and it has not issued any sovereign guarantees. To achieve this diversification of resource mobilization for financing sustainable national development, Madam Speaker, government has developed the Integrated National Finance Framework, an architecture that provides innovative ways of engaging both public and private sector at domestic and international level. Economic stabilization measures. Madam Speaker, in addressing the key economic challenges that have affected our economy, which are price instability and foreign exchange scarcity, government is therefore implementing the following structural reforms. Number one, Madam Speaker, is price stability. On price stability, the following have been lined up, Madam Speaker. Number one, develop a comprehensive price stabilization policy with input from the private sector and consumer protection bodies. Madam Speaker, you remember when the President came here during the presidential question time, he did instruct Minister of Trade and my ministry to work on price stability. I would like to assure this august House that my ministry and line ministries are working tirelessly on making sure that this country achieves price stability. Number two, Madam Speaker, strengthen the national supply chain for essential commodities through strategic reserves and supply agreements. And number three, ensure adequate maize supply on the market, including the importation of maize from neighboring countries as a pledged supply before the imminent harvesting season. Foreign exchange availability. Madam Speaker, on this one, number one is that we are establishing sustainable sources of generating foreign exchange that includes direct participation of the banking sector to work with the private sector companies with export potential and diversification of bank loans to productive and growth potential sectors of the economy. Number two, Madam Speaker, establish a national anti-forex crime unit to tackle parallel market activities and ensure compliance with forex regulations. The unit, Madam Speaker, shall also be responsible for combating illegal exportation of the country's minerals and agricultural produce. Madam Speaker, we are also going to continue working with the Inspector General of Malawi Police to deploy physical and CID police officers and all intelligence institutions to raid places suspected to be dealing in illegal forex trade. It is therefore my plea, Madam Speaker, to the general public and to this House to comply with their work and report any suspicious activities for the good of our country. We are going to develop a comprehensive export diversification strategy, including value-added sectors and digital trade promotion. We will strengthen legal frameworks to empower the Ministry of Trade in key commodity sectors and improve export data transparency. We are going to implement measures that will prioritize manufacturing sector for value addition, employment generation, and exportation by, among others, incentivizing production, jealously guard our foreign exchange, and sealing all the loopholes in foreign exchange management. Diversify the economy to focus on production through agriculture, tourism, mining, and manufacturing. And we are also going to intensify efforts to curb smuggling in the informal mining sector. We are going to operationalize the Malawi Mining Company and the Malawi Development Corporation Holdings Limited. We are going to ban importation of all non-essential commodities which are producible in Malawi and incentivize individuals and firms to venture into local production of such banned importations through various taxation measures. Government has also embarked on discussions with international investors in Malawi and all big companies to develop backward linkages with our SMEs sector for their raw materials and inputs requirements, thereby creating off-take markets to our SMEs and preserve the much-needed forex. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, the budgets are formulated in line with the first 10-year MIV-1 of Malawi 2063. I would like to assure all Malawians that the government remains committed to achieving its aspirations as attested by His Excellency Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Jagwera, President of the Republic, during his State of the National Address on 14 February 2025, titled, and I quote, "Taking our development forward to continue the progress we have delivered." Madam Speaker, in the same vein, in the 2025-26 budget, it aims to continue financing key existing and emerging projects in all districts, as highlighted by the President. Therefore, Madam Speaker, this budget is guided by the theme, and this is the theme, Madam Speaker, consolidating gains, strengthening resilience and inclusivity for accelerated socio-economic transformation. As we continue with the recovery process, Madam Speaker, it is with determination and hope that today I present to you a budget that aims not just to stabilize our economy, but to revitalize it by focusing on our key productive sectors of agriculture, tourism, mining, and manufacturing. As such, Madam Speaker, there is need for concerted efforts to further strengthen resilience against the economic challenges that the country is facing, because without microeconomic stability, our efforts to revamp it will be futile. Investments in key productive sectors. Madam Speaker, along with the macro stabilization process, government is revamping the economy through strategic investments in productive sectors such as agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and mining. As such, Madam Speaker, the 2025-26 budget has been designed to significantly finance these growth-propelling sectors, details of which I will outline later in this statement. Madam Speaker, as such, the ATM strategy will remain crucial to achieving food security, ensuring sustainable sources of foreign exchange generation, and ultimately drive economic growth. Consequently, Madam Speaker, inflation will be contained and start its downward trajectory. This budget, therefore, Madam Speaker, has been designed to deal with the actual problems more than just the symptoms. The 2024-25 budget performance. Madam Speaker, I would like to briefly present the 2024-25 budget performance to the August House. In the fiscal or financial year, the total revenue, including grants, is estimated to close at 4.35 trillion, representing 23.2% of GDP. Domestic revenue, Madam Speaker, is expected to reach 3.11 trillion, of which tax revenue is estimated at 2.99 trillion and 125.13 billion is other revenue. Madam Speaker, improving domestic revenue mobilization is key to addressing government spending needs. The government continues to focus on broadening the tax base, improving tax compliance, improving the perception of the tax system, strengthening the institutional capacity for revenue mobilization, and improving non-tax revenue collection as it implements the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Expenditure performance. Madam Speaker, total expenditure for 2024-25 financial year is projected to close at 6.14 trillion, representing 32.8% of GDP. The expenditure comprises 4.52 trillion in recurrent expenditure and 1.62 trillion in development expenditure. The development expenditure comprises 314.13 billion from domestic revenue and 1.31 trillion from foreign resources. Madam Speaker, the current expenditure for 2024-25 financial year comprises 1.31 trillion for compensation of employees and 1.02 trillion for use of goods and services, 1.46 trillion for interest payment, and 378.50 billion for grants to other general government units, and 317.06 billion for social benefits, and 34.44 billion for other expenses. Physical balance. Madam Speaker, based on the preliminary outturn of revenue and expenditure in the 2024-25 financial year, the overall deficit is estimated at 1.79 trillion, representing 9.6% of the country's GDP. The deficit, Madam Speaker, is therefore estimated to be financed through domestic borrowing amounting to 1.59 trillion and foreign borrowing amounting to 196.49 billion. Progress on selected key achievements in 2024-25 financial year. Madam Speaker, despite the challenges that the economy has been encountering, remarkable progress in a number of sectors has nonetheless been registered. I would therefore, Madam Speaker, like to present some of the milestones that have been registered in various sectors as follows. The health sector. Madam Speaker, improving the health and well-being of all Malawians by providing equitable, equality, and accessible health services is the catalyst of human capital development, which is the determinant of a productive labor force. Madam Speaker, government is focusing on enhancing health infrastructure development, providing quality health workforce, improving health financing, and fostering good governance for sustainable health outcomes. The government has, among other vital milestones. Number one, constructed radiotherapy bunkers for the National Cancer Center, and 2 machines have already been installed and commissioned. We have commenced the construction of superstructures at Imponera Community Health, which is at an advanced stage. Madam Speaker, we have also we are doing the construction of Domas Community Hospital Phase 1, and this has been completed. Madam Speaker, as a way of accelerating the decentralization process, the government deployed the direct facility financing arrangement, which was first piloted in Luntha from 2022 to 2023, and it is scaling up to 13 other districts in 2025 to 2026. And Madam Speaker, these are the following, the districts: Chitipa, Nkhotakota, Kasungu, Nchisi, Lilongwe, Salima, Dedza, Machinga, Branta, Chikwawa, Nsanje, Balaka, and Mangochi. Agriculture sector. Madam Speaker, in the agriculture sector, the government's priority is investing in irrigation infrastructure and mega farms across the country as a way of expanding our export base. And some of the initiatives that have been undertaken include the following, Madam Speaker. Number one, construction of the Shile Valley Transformation Irrigation Project Phase 1, which is now at 98%. Construction of Vitale Irrigation Scheme. Delivered 23,000 metric tons of maize to ADMAC and NFA under the Mega Farms program. Exported 3,500 metric tons of beans under the Meta Meg Farm. A rehabilitation of 1,625 hectares of Rimpansa, Kanjeza, Salankungu, Muona, Masenjere, and Nambuma irrigation schemes. Local manufacturing of agricultural mechanization equipment such as handheld tractor, planter, harvester, and maize share under the Malawi University of Business and Applied Science project. Madam Speaker, let me repeat on this one. We have been able to produce agricultural mechanization equipment right here in Malawi. The handheld tractor, the planter, the harvester, the maize sheller, all these have been done by the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. Madam Speaker, We have also registered customary land parcels using the land information management systems with over 60,000 parcels from Chikwawa, Msanje, Machinga, Kasungu, Godagoda, Palombe, Nkatabe, Lumhi, Chitipa, Kalonga, and Zomba districts. Madam Speaker, the government continued to implement the Affordable Inputs Program, AIP, in the 2024-25 farming season with a budget of 1.61 billion. As of 24th January 2025, the government had distributed 3,771.2 metric tons of seed, 22,644 metric tons of NPK, and 23,704.9 metric tons of urea fertilizers. Madam Speaker, as part of government's efforts to promote food security, reducing hunger and strengthening Malawi's food security, the National Economic Empowerment Fund, NIF, has been actively supporting smallholder farmers through the Farm Input Loan Program, FRIP. As of February 2025, NIF has successfully distributed 18,908 metric tons of fertilizer, valued at 65.1 billion, to 65,834 farmers. These efforts reflect the government's commitment to enhancing agricultural productivity and ensuring sustainable food supply for all Malawians. Madam Speaker, in order to increase agricultural productivity, the government is also investing in the promotion of mechanized farm operations by establishing hiring centers within the agricultural development divisions. To this end, Madam Speaker, 8 machinery sets have already been procured. Madam Speaker, the government continued to commit resources to promote livestock development in the country through good extension advice on improved management practices. As a result of this, Madam Speaker, cattle population increased by 4% from 2,187,583 cattle to 2,269,055. Goats and sheep population both increased by 8%. Pigs increased from 11,507,091 to 12,475,657, and indigenous chicken increased from 103,397,473 to 113,860,549. Tourism sector. Madam Speaker, the government prioritizes the promotion of tourism for the country's socio-economic development by focusing on executing a robust marketing framework, conducting promotional activities, collaborating with key market representatives, and utilizing tourism levy funds for effective marketing. The contribution of the tourism industry represented 4.8% and 5.4% of the GDP in 2023 and 2024 respectively. The following are some of the key achievements in the tourism sector: completion of designs for a mid-market eco-lodge at Wangombe, Rumen, construction of the Mulanje Porters Race Sports under the Malawi Gaming and Lotteries Authority is underway, and signing of a contract for the development and management of an eco-friendly picnic site at Domway Island with a budget of $60,000. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, targeted campaigns have been launched in countries such as the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Germany, and the Netherlands, showcasing Malawi's unique attractions, including Lake Malawi, wildlife safaris, and cultural heritage. Innovative marketing promotion activities have also been piloted, such as advertising through international football clubs and taxis in London and Germany. Mining sector. Madam Speaker, the government is committed to ensuring that Malawi derives maximum benefits from its mineral wealth. Thus, the government undertook the following, Madam Speaker: operationalizing the Malawi Mining Investment Company, which is a subsidiary of the Malawi Development Corporation. Construction of a state-of-the-art mineral laboratory complex and procurement of laboratory equipment has commenced. establishment of the Mines and Minerals Regulatory Authority, and we have also successfully negotiated and signed 2 mining development agreements. Formalization of artisanal and small-scale miners. Work is in progress to formalize the following 5 new mining cooperatives: Milepa in Zomba, Tigwirizane in Chitimbe, in Baraka, Kasia in Lilongwe, Chinteche in Nkatabe, and Chitantamapiri in Kasungu. And we have also done the creation of structured market for gold and gemstones. As of November 2024, Madam Speaker, the Reserve Bank of Malawi, through Export Development Fund, purchased 293 kilograms of gold worth 34 billion Malawi kwacha. Transport sector. Madam Speaker, infrastructure development is pivotal to spur economic growth in the country. Thus, the government, through the Ministry of Transport and Public Works, has made tremendous efforts to establish a sustainable, safe, efficient, and reliable transport system. I therefore, Madam Speaker, would like to present to the House progress on some of the transport infrastructure development as follows. Number 1, completion of the M1 road from Crossroads to Kanengo with the support from the People's Republic of China. Madam Speaker, I want to repeat this call upon this House to verify and walk along on these roads, because the roads that I'm talking about are completed, Madam Speaker. We have completed the M1 road from Crossroads to Kanengo with the support from the People's Republic of China, and indeed, the roads are very beautiful, Madam Speaker. We have completed the capacity improvement of Nzimba Street with funding from the government. The capacity improvement of Kenyatta Road and Shatta Street. The expansion of M1 Road from junction with Baila Hospital and junction with Male Road. Commencement of capacity improvement of Kaunda and Jendawaka Road. And construction of Likoma Port is at 90% and is expected to be completed in 2025-26 financial year. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, want to highlight that significant progress continues in the rehabilitation of the following projects, Madam Speaker. The M1 road from Kia Junction to Nzimba Tenof and Kacheche to Chiweta. Kapatenga Nkota Dwangwa, the M5 road. Nsipe Chingen Liwonde road, which has commenced. The phase 1 of upgrading the Ncheu Tsangano Neno Mwanza road. Upgrading of Cholo Makwasa Muona Bangula road. And upgrading of phase 3 of Chitipa Ilomba road. And finally, Madam Speaker, the Cholo Tegerani Makanga road. Madam Speaker, the country in 2024 witnessed the resumption. Madam Speaker, I would like to draw your attention, Madam Speaker, on this one. Madam Speaker, the country in 2024 witnessed the resumption of train services between Luntha and Lilongwe following the completion of rehabilitation of Nkaya-Lilongwe railway line. In addition, Madam Speaker, the construction of Malaga-Bangura railway is in progress. Education sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the government recognizes the role played by the education sector as an enabler of socio-economic transformation of this administration. Since 2020, Madam Speaker, the government has focused on promoting equitable access to education, improving quality and enhancing governance and management of the education sector. Madam Speaker, under the basic education, the following are the major achievements. Number 1, commenced the construction works of 2,170 classrooms in 1,085 primary schools. Procured 116,066 tablets under Building Education Foundation through innovations and technology. Provided additional 34,000 kaya to the existing rural allowance scheme to 12,000 primary school teachers in 537 hard-to-reach schools, procured and distributed 390,000 textbooks to senior primary schools. Madam Speaker, with support from development partners, government rolled out the National Mathematics Curriculum Reforms Program for Standards 1 and 2 in all primary schools across the country. Government also supplied 2 million learners workbooks and trained 30,000 teachers and 730 specialist teachers to implement the program. Madam Speaker, the government, in collaboration with World Bank, has constructed 668 classrooms in 334 primary schools across the country. Madam Speaker, under the secondary education, government has completed expansion works of 35 CDSSs under the World Bank Equals project. We have constructed 59 cost-effective classroom blocks under the World Bank Equals project. We have trained 1,432 secondary school head teachers and deputies on school management and instructional leadership. We have procured 328,177 textbooks, 1,895 computers, and 27,100 desks for secondary schools across the country. We have expanded access to visual science laboratories in 55 community-day secondary schools. We have introduced coding innovation laboratories in 9 secondary schools under the Malawi Girls Can Code project in partnership with UN Women. We have also constructed 75 smart ICT laboratories in CDSs and completed the designs for the construction of 6 secondary schools of excellence. Madam Speaker, under the higher and tertiary education, the government has done the following. We have increased the students' upkeep loans from 350,000 to 560,000 and the number of loan beneficiaries. Madam Speaker, let me repeat on this one. This government of Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera has increased the students' upkeep loans from 350,000 to 560,000. Madam Speaker, not only that, the government of Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera has also increased the loan beneficiaries from 26,000 in 2023 to 31,000 just last year. Madam Speaker, we continued with the construction of the University Administration Complex. We have completed the construction of the University Innovation Port at the Malawi University of Business and 2 science labs, an open and distance e-learning space at Kuhes. Lilongwe campus site has also started, and construction of the new administration block and classroom blocks at UNIMA. Water and sanitation. Madam Speaker, recognizing the catalytic role that water and sanitation play in the socio-economic development of our country and the need for every Malawian to have access to safe water and improved sanitation services, the government is implementing the following water supply projects. Malawi Watershed Services Improvement amounting to $160 million, which will cover parts of Cheu, Neno, Luntha, Machinga, Mango, Chizomba, and Baraka. Solar-powered water supply schemes, including solar-powered boreholes and irrigation schemes through the Malawi Resilience and Disaster Risk Management Project. Solar-powered groundwater supply systems projects in all 193 constituencies, targeting 579,000 households. Kolongo multipurpose dam water supply and irrigation project, targeting 191,000 beneficiaries. Salima water supply project, Kalonga town supply project, Northern Region Water Board water efficiency project, with the project having commenced in Nzuzu and Ikwendeni. Government reforms program. Madam Speaker, allow me to update the August House on the progress of implementing various public sector reforms undertaken to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of service delivery, the public financial management reforms. Madam Speaker, to facilitate the attainment of sound financial management, government will continue to implement public financial management reforms outlined in the public finance management strategy. Madam Speaker, to enhance revenue generation, government has completed the development of an automated stamp and estate duty system in the Department of Registrar General. Madam Speaker, government through the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority will embark on the rollout of electronic procurement system commencing March 2025 and electronic procurement to streamline procurement processes to achieve transparency and efficiency in procurement, and the electronic procurement system, Madam Speaker, will further assist government to curb corruption related to procurement in the public service. Madam Speaker, government is developing a new beneficial ownership module on the Malawi business registration system, which will be fully interfaced with the Malawi National Electronic Procurement System. With this integration, Madam Speaker, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority will be able to access beneficial ownership information for companies participating in public procurement. State-owned enterprises performance. Madam Speaker, government continues to strengthen its oversight role over state-owned enterprises through monitoring performance, implementing necessary reforms, and ensuring remittance of returns to its investments in state-owned enterprises. In light of the above, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to report to this august House that some state-owned enterprises have registered good performance from loss-making to profit-making, with some remitting dividends to government, which amounted to over 13.5 billion in 2025 financial year. In this regard, Madam Speaker, I would like to commend the following state-owned enterprises for their continued remittance of dividends: the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, the Malawi Gaming and Lotteries Authority, the Malawi Bureau of Standards, Tobacco Commission, the National Construction Industry Council, the National Oil Company of Malawi, Lilongwe Water Board, Air Cargo Malawi, Malawi Accountants Board, Airport Developments Limited, and Umoti Holdings Limited, among others. Madam Speaker, I think this part needs to get attention of the general public and this House. We used to have state-owned enterprises that used to make perpetual losses in this country. But as we report now, Madam Speaker, the above mentioned and listed SOEs are now making profits, and they are able to remit dividends. Madam Speaker, I am delighted to report therefore that government has successfully Madam Speaker, I am delighted to report that government has successfully negotiated the renewal of the Malawi Airlines management contract with Ethiopian Airways, which will be signed this year. The new agreement aims at enhancing operational efficiency, financial sustainability, and the strategic positioning of Malawi Airlines as a key regional aviation hub of connectivity in Southern Africa. Madam Speaker, to support the accomplishment of this strategic direction, the government has put in place significant investment plans to modernize our airports, including the construction of Air City at Kamuzu International Airport in Lilongwe through a private-public partnership management, and the government has also put aside resources for establishment of the Malawi Air Cargo Airline. Madam Speaker, the rejuvenation of NIF into a revolving fund has spurred economic growth in key economic sectors. through the provision of crucial financial support to farmers and micro-entrepreneurs. To date, Madam Speaker, NID has disbursed over 200 billion through both cash and farm input loan products. As many as 210,000 Malawians have been served, and an average loan collection rate of 80%. This, Madam Speaker, is unprecedented. Madam Speaker, the efforts of the government to reach out and economically empower the ordinary and marginalized Malawians cannot go unnoticed. Government has continuously supported the National Economic Empowerment Fund by injecting 180 billion in just 4 years, Madam Speaker. As you are aware, Madam Speaker, government established Malawi Development Corporation Holdings Limited to spearhead investments in the strategic sectors. Currently, Madam Speaker, the company is in discussion with various investors in the transport, agriculture, food processing, and mining, among others, to roll out its operations in these strategic sectors. And meanwhile, various business cases, Madam Speaker, from investors are being reviewed. Simply put, Madam Speaker, MDC is back. Madam Speaker, as this August House is aware, Madam Speaker, in 2023-24 financial year, government restructured ADMAC Limited, resulting into a right-sized workforce and a more commercial-oriented organization. Government continues to support ADMAC in its commercial drive to not only trade in maize, but also to go into crop production, value additions, and trading in other commercial commodities, thereby transitioning into a lead aggregator of agricultural commodities and contributing towards food stabilization. Information and digitalization reforms. Madam Speaker, to achieve improved operational efficiency, the government is in the process of amalgamating ICT-based institutions which provide similar services to the general public. As part of this process, Madam Speaker, government is acquiring Malawi Telecommunications Limited, which will be merged with the Malawi Digital Broadcasting Network, ESCOM Optical Fiber Communication, and Government-Wide Area Network. Madam Speaker, this amalgamation will streamline operations, enhance service quality, and optimize resource utilization through building a more resilient and interconnected digital infrastructure, thereby ensuring that Malawi's digital future is both robust and sustainable. Integrated financial management and information systems, SAP-based IFMIS. Madam Speaker, government will continue building on the gains that have been registered from implementation of the SAP-based IFMIS. In the 2024-25 financial year, the following milestones relates to, number one, expanded transaction coverage to include foreign missions transactions, local council transfers, debt transactions, and all central government ministries, departments, and agencies. Introduction of revenue management module and IFMIS MRA interface. Madam Speaker, the core banking system within RBM called FlexCube was upgraded to directly interface with IFMIS, resulting into efficiencies in payment processing and reconciliation. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the IFMIS data center within Capitol Hill has been completed and is currently also hosting other systems for National Legislation Bureau, Department of Disaster Management Affairs, and Malawi Revenue Authority. In the 2025-26 financial year, Madam Speaker, government will introduce the Human Capital Management module for payroll processing to replace the HIMIS for better management of the civil service workforce, including payroll and pension processes. Government will also, in the 2025-26 financial year, begin upgrading the IFMIS for local councils following a successful business process re-engineering. The upgraded system will bring about efficiency in accounting for expenditures and revenues in the local authorities, poverty reduction, and social protection. Madam Speaker, the social cash transfer program has reached over 298 28,449 households nationwide in all the 28 districts. However, Madam Speaker, the retargeting of beneficiary households is underway, and the targeted total number of households is being estimated at 382,457. Madam Speaker, the Climate Smart Enhanced Public Works Program is focused on building community assets through watershed management interventions. The program, Madam Speaker, is targeting over 520,000 ultra-poor households across the country, which contain members with labor capacity and are not on social cash transfer program. The 2025-26 budget. Madam Speaker, now allow me to present to this August House the 2025-26 fiscal targets and the assumptions underpinning the estimates. Major assumptions for the 2025-26 budget. Madam Speaker, the 2025-26 budget has assumed a fiscalized real GDP growth rate of 3.4% and average inflation rate of 22.3%. Total revenue and grants. Madam Speaker, total revenue and grants for 2025-26 financial year are estimated at 5.58 trillion, representing 21.5% of our GDP. Domestic revenues are estimated at 4.44 trillion, representing 17.1% of our GDP, of which tax revenue, Madam Speaker, are estimated at 4.33 trillion, and other revenues being projected at 106.02 billion. Madam Speaker, grants are estimated at 1.14 trillion, of which 1.10 trillion will come from international organizations and 86.36 billion from foreign governments. Expenditure. Madam Speaker, total expenditure for the 2025-26 financial year is projected at 8.05 trillion, representing 31.1% of our GDP. Of the total expenditure, recurrent expenses are estimated at 6.04 trillion, representing 23.3%, and GDP of our GDP and 75.0% of our total expenditure. Madam Speaker, development expenditure for the 2025-26 financial year is estimated at 2.01 trillion, of which 1.44 trillion is for foreign financed projects and 578.60 billion is for domestic financed projects. Financial or physical balance and financing. Madam Speaker, the 2025-26 financial year's overall balance is estimated at a deficit of 2.47 trillion, which is 9.5% of our GDP. This deficit, Madam Speaker, will be financed through domestic borrowing amounting to 2.33 trillion, representing 9.0% of our GDP, and 145.78 billion of foreign borrowing. Highlights of the 2025-26 budget. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to the highlights of the 2025-26 financial year's budget as follows. Wages and salaries. Madam Speaker, in the 2025-26 financial year, wages and salaries are projected to grow to 1.53 trillion, representing 5.9% of our GDP. Madam Speaker, this includes resources amounting to 10 billion for recruitment and 176 billion reserved for general salary increment. Madam Speaker, let me repeat here, it is this government and it is this budget that has budgeted 10 billion for recruitment of new recruits here and 176 billion reserved for general salary increment. Madam Speaker, pensions and gratuities. Madam Speaker, pensions and gratuities is estimated at 170.4 billion, which will cater for the continued clearance of the backlog and monthly pension obligations. Madam Speaker, the waiting period has significantly reduced following the additional injection of 100 billion facility that the government specifically obtained for this purpose. Interest payment. Madam Speaker, public debt interest is projected at 2.17 trillion, which is 8.4% of our GDP and 49.2% of domestic revenues. Of the total public debt interest, foreign debt interest is estimated at 61.2 billion, while interest for domestic debt is estimated at 2.11 trillion. Madam Speaker, to mitigate the debt interest burden, government is now focusing on production in order to enhance domestic revenue collection. This is coupled with the implementation of the domestic revenue mobilization strategy that is expected to broaden the tax base, improve tax compliance, strengthen the capacity for revenue mobilization, and improve non-tax revenue collection. Maize purchases and allocation to ADMAT. Madam Speaker, in order to provide easy and timely access to maize markets for all the farmers, the 2025-26 financial year's budget has allocated 60 billion towards maize purchases. And Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, in order to provide easy and timely access to maize markets for all the farmers, the 2025-26 financial year's budget has allocated 60 billion Malai kwacha towards maize purchases. Madam Speaker, as if this is not enough, Madam Speaker, this budget has also provided 53 billion that has been allocated to ADMAC to revamp its operations. Madam Speaker, affordable input program. Madam Speaker, I wish to inform this August House that the reforms on AIP program are ongoing. The government's focus is enhancing production for the attainment of household and national food sufficiency and increasing disposable income for all Malawians. Irrigation. Madam Speaker, to achieve this, various initiatives such as the AIP, mega farms, irrigation and farm input loans being administered by Luntha are working in complementarity for this purpose. Madam Speaker, in light of this, the 2025-26 financial year's budget for AIP has been pegged at 131.6 billion. Grants to other general government units. Madam Speaker, grants to other government units are estimated at 543.1 billion. The composition of this includes the following, Madam Speaker: 129.7 billion transferred to Malawi Revenue Authority, 101.1 billion for Lords Funds Administration, 8 billion for Lords Authority, and 268.3 billion for subvented organizations, and 36 billion for tertiary education students' loans. Elections. Madam Speaker, this budget has also made allocations to elections. Madam Speaker, another notable allocation in the 2025-26 financial year, amounting to 162.9 billion, has gone to the Malawi Electoral Commission to enable them manage the forthcoming tripartite general elections. These resources are specifically for polling and all the remaining activities in the electoral process. Madam Speaker, the allocation represents an increase of 207% from the 2024-25 revised provision of 53.1 billion. 2025-26 key sector allocations and development projects. Madam Speaker, this year's budget is very unique. in the sense that it has prioritized allocations that will enable us to address the challenges of fuel, fertilizer, forex, and food, the 4Fs. It is therefore, Madam Speaker, for this reason that the government is pursuing procurement of fertilizer and fuel through the government-to-government arrangement, which is G2G, over and above the open tender system. This will also ensure that procurement of these strategic commodities is streamlined. In addition to this, Madam Speaker, government is working towards having a fertilizer manufacturing plant within borders of this country to ensure that prices of fertilizer are reduced significantly. Madam Speaker, government is also advocating the use of organic fertilizers that are locally manufactured and are cost-effective. Madam Speaker, to address food challenges, government is focusing on production, and you will note shortly in my presentation that a substantial amount of resources have been allocated towards irrigation development so that the country moves away from over-dependence on land-fed agriculture. Irrigation, Madam Speaker, is therefore a very critical to stabilizing maize yields, reducing food shortages, and protecting smallholder farmers from economic shocks. Madam Speaker, the expectation is that once the dividends of our focus on production have begun bearing fruits, the foreign exchange challenges will be a thing of the past. This, Madam Speaker, is because through production, the country will attain food self-sufficiency and have access for exports, and the proceeds from the mining and tourism industry, Madam Speaker, will also as well generate much-needed foreign exchange for the stabilization of our economy. Madam Speaker, recovering, diversifying, and protecting the economy, which is the RDP, remains our focus in the 2025-26 financial year. In order for our economy to recover, government has prioritized production through strategic investments in agriculture, tourism, and mining, and details of which I will be highlighting below. Madam Speaker, the government is diversifying the economy by not only concentrating on agriculture alone, but other strategic sectors that have the potential to turn around the fortunes of this country, like the mining and tourism. Madam Speaker, even within the agriculture, the focus is on irrigation farming to reduce overdependence on land-fed agriculture, large-scale fish production under the agriculture mega farms, and extensive rice production through the Ndola irrigation scheme. This is over and above the traditional maize and tobacco production that has been scaled up. Madam Speaker, I wish to underscore that it is the responsibility of every Malawian to ensure that our economy is protected. As noble citizens, we need to jealously safeguard our natural resources and whatever is produced so that they benefit the country at large. For instance, Madam Speaker, we need to curb smuggling and illegal cross-border trade and ensure that fair trade practices are conducted countrywide. Agriculture, tourism, mining, and manufacturing. Madam Speaker, in order to stimulate economic growth through job creation, reduce the dependency on imports, increase the export opportunities, and other resultant multiplier effects to the economy, government has deliberately allocated substantial resources to a number of productive sectors, including agriculture, irrigation, tourism, mining, and trade. Agriculture sector and irrigation development. Madam Speaker, cognizance of the significant contribution of agriculture to the socio-economic growth and development of this country, the sector has been allocated a total of 693.3 billion, representing 9% of the total budget. Madam Speaker, some of the notable allocations under this sector include 99.5 billion for irrigation development, 38.3 billion for mega farms, 53.1 billion for Adema, 60 billion for maize purchases, 131.6 billion for affordable input program, and 70 billion for farm input loan program administered by NIF. Madam Speaker, to mitigate the impact of El Nino-induced dry spells and ensure food security, the government has allocated 99.5 billion for irrigation development, with land-fed agriculture dominating food production, and irrigation is critical to stabilizing maize yields, reducing food shortages, and protecting smallholder farmers from economic shocks. Madam Speaker, the government aims to maximize utilization of 56,113 hectares of irrigable land, targeting a maize yield of about 330,000 metric tons. The following are some of the key activities to be undertaken: developing 6,000 hectares of new irrigation infrastructure, rehabilitating 9,000 hectares of irrigable land, and supporting farm groups covering 46,706 hectares. Madam Speaker, regarding development projects, government has prioritized the following, aimed at enhancing productivity and commercialization: agricultural commercialization project with an allocation of 143.5 billion, Chile Valley Transformation Project has 71.9 billion. This is aimed at improving irrigation infrastructure and optimizing land use. Program for rural irrigation development has been provided 30.9 billion, and 30.1 billion is for transformation, agriculture production and transformation, and entrepreneurship. A provision of 6.8 billion has been made for agricultural infrastructure and youth in agribusiness project, which focuses on empowering young farmers. For the livestock infrastructure development for sustainable animal health, production and marketing project, 2.5 billion is provided to improve veterinary services and enhance livestock productivity. Agriculture machinery production being implemented by the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, and promotion of mechanized farm operations through hiring centers in Malawi with a provision of 500 million kwacha. Tourism sector. Madam Speaker, tourism remains one of Malawi's fastest growing service sectors, with the potential to drive economic growth, job creation, and foreign exchange earnings. To fully harness this potential, government is committed to creating a conducive environment that will enable the sector to thrive and meaningfully contribute to the national development. Madam Speaker, in the 24-25-26 financial year, government has allocated 13.9 billion compared to the 4.8 billion in the 24-25 budget, representing 192% increase to boost the sector. Of this allocation, 4.2 billion is earmarked for tourism promotion and development, 3.7 billion for wildlife management and conservation, and 6 billion for the implementation of various development projects aimed at enhancing Malawi's tourism potential. Madam Speaker, some of the strategic focus areas for the sector in the 2025-26 financial year include development of eco-lodges and support infrastructure in Kasungu National Park, development of public beaches across the shores of Lake Malawi, development of access roads to tourist resort areas, capacity building for front staff and tourism industry players, completion of the Malawi Institute of Tourism in Mzuzu campus, safeguarding of the wildlife in all protected areas, domestic, regional, and international tourism promotion, automation of revenue collection, hosting of Tagulandra and Malawi International Expo, and strengthening the legal framework and tourism institutional capacity. The mining sector. Mining is a key priority for the government due to its vast potential to create employment opportunities, generate foreign exchange earnings, and drive economic growth and development. The government is committed to unlocking the full potential of this sector to ensure its meaningful contribution towards Malawi's transformation. Madam Speaker, in the 25-26 financial year, a total of 14.2 billion has been allocated under this sector from 5.5 billion that was allocated in the 24-25 financial year, representing a 160% increase. Specifically, Madam Speaker, 5.1 billion has been earmarked for mining regulatory authority, and 4 billion for the establishment of the mining company, 4.1 billion for mining and geological services, and 1 billion for the mineral laboratory. Madam Speaker, through the Malawi Mining Investment Company, a nationwide survey Malawi Mining Investment Company, a nationwide survey to identify and assess gold mining sites will be undertaken. This initiative will inform strategic investments in gold mining, buying and selling, thereby ensuring that all gold produced in Malawi enters the formal market for the benefits of the nation. Madam Speaker, it is against this background that Malawi is losing significant revenue through illegal gold trade. Madam Speaker, the government is implementing programs and projects to strengthen the mining sector and maximize its economic potential. And these includes, number one, reviewing gemstone export procedures to enhance transparency and accountability in management of foreign exchange earnings from gemstones, facilitating the commencement of large-scale mining projects, strengthening enforcement and inspections to ensure compliance with mining regulations, conducting geological mapping to identify more potential mineral deposits of high value, conducting mineral processing research and analytical laboratory services to improve mineral value addition, and finally carrying out mineral or mining investment promotion to attract investors and stimulate sector growth, transport, public waste, and ICT infrastructure sector. Madam Speaker, in the 2025-26 financial year, the transport and ICT infrastructure sector has been allocated resources amounting to 422.3 billion. These resources have been allocated to Ministry of Transport and Public Works, Lords Fund Administration, Ministry of Information and Digitalization for their routine operations and implementation of development projects. Some of the notable projects, Madam Speaker, under this sector include, under Transport and Public Works, reconstruction and rehabilitation of Limbe-Bangula Railway section, rehabilitation of government offices at Capitol Hill, completion of the construction of Likoma Port, development of Central Materials Laboratory, and modernization of Kamuzu International Airport. Madam Speaker, you may wish to note that out of the 422.3 billion under the transport and ICT infrastructure sector, 144.8 billion has been earmarked for the roads subsector for implementation for various projects. And some of the roads, Madam Speaker, are the following. And I really ask for the attention of the general public. This budget is financing the following roads. Number one, Luntha Nyika Teno Fuhewe Road, Chitipa Ilomba Road, Luntha Nyika Chitipa Road, Kalonga Songwe Rehabilitation Project, Kacheche Bwengu Chiweta Road, Njagwa Pwezi Livingstonia Road, Jenda Imbangweni Edingeni Road, Nzimba Nzalangwe Road, Kia Junction Kasungu Jenda Nzimba Road, Dezaboma Rup Road, Njeu Tsangano Mwanza Road, Capacity Improvement of Lilongwe City Roads, Kapadenga Benga Dwangwa Road, Sante Mkota Gabiri Road, Chimwanza Nambuma Gasia Road, Nsulira Nkota Maganjira Road, Cholo Tegera Nimuona Bangura Road, Manki Bekep Magrie Road, Lilongwe Namatunu Machinga Road, and Chiringa Muroza Road. Madam Speaker, under Information and Digitalization, We are going to do the last mile rural area connectivity project, digital Malawi project, digital migration project, nurse enhancement project, education and skills development sector. Madam Speaker, education and skills development serve as a catalyst in the socio-economic growth and transformation of any country due to the resultant increased productivity, the higher earning potential, and reduced social inequalities among the population. In recognition of this, Madam Speaker, the government will continue to provide quality, relevant, and equitable education to the people of Malawi. Madam Speaker, in the 2025-26 financial year, government has allocated 1.3 trillion to the education sector and skills development sector, representing 16.6% of the total expenditure. These resources are earmarked for basic and secondary education, higher education, and various projects. And some notable allocations, Madam Speaker, include the following. Number one, Madam Speaker, 36 billion for higher education students' loans and upkeep allowances, 186.7 billion for the universities and other subvented organizations within the sector, 363.6 billion to the ministries of basic and secondary education and higher education, and 26.3 billion to the education sector within the local councils. Madam Speaker, with regard to infrastructure development, government is implementing a number of projects in the education sector, including construction of 34 secondary schools of excellence, expansion and rehabilitation of the University of Malawi, construction of Mzuzu University Library, construction of Inkos Mberwa University, equity with equality and learning at secondary, Malawi Education Reform Project, schools for vibrant economy, construction of inclusive education resource center, construction of Lulanga Secondary School, construction of teachers' houses, Gwanda Jaguamba Center of Excellence, and construction of science laboratories and laboratories. Health and population sector. Madam Speaker, before I come to health and population sector, let me mention, Madam Speaker, that when the President attended the PIM function, he did promise about the John Chilembwe schools of excellence. This budget, Madam Speaker, has taken care of that school. Health and population sector. Madam Speaker, the importance of investing in health for the enhanced productivity and well-being of the country's citizens cannot be overemphasized. In this regard, Madam Speaker, the 2025-26 financial year's budget has allocated 741.05 billion, representing 9.2% of the total national budget towards health and population sector. Madam Speaker, the following are some of the key projects to be implemented: completion of the Cancer Center, construction of Mponela Community Hospital, construction of 55 health posts, the Malawi Emergency Project to protect essential health services and contribution to the health sector joint fund, water and sanitation. Madam Speaker, access to clean water and sanitation is essential for human health, dignity, and well-being of the citizen. Water and sanitation is therefore one of the priority areas of the government and a critical component of sustainable development and human capital development. In the water and sanitation sector, Madam Speaker, some of the priority projects include Kalonga Town Water Supply, the water supply centers for Tondwe, Migowi, Ulongwe, Zalewa, Fatima, and Makanjira, rehabilitation and expansion of Dowa, Dwangwa, Salima, Nkhotakota, Nchisi, Chewa, and Dedza schemes, and the groundwater extraction for rural piped water development program. The Luntha Water Sanitation Services Improvement Project, Lilongwe Water and Sanitation Project, National Water and Sanitation Project, improvement of water supply services in Dowa, Kolongo Multipurpose Dam for Mponela Town, Ngadabe Town Supply, Water Supply and Sanitation Project, Salima Lilongwe Water Project, Maganjira Water Supply Scheme, and upgrading, rehabilitation and extension of Mchalo Water Supply Project. Environmental and climate change management. Madam Speaker, effective management of environment and climate change is critical for mitigation of climate risks, conserving natural resources and ensuring a sustainable future. In this regard, Madam Speaker, government has allocated 28.4 billion to support environmental protection, climate resilience and sustainable resource management, to enhance climate action and environmental conservation. The government to implement the following reforms: develop the climate change bill to establish a legal framework for climate governance, review the national environmental policy, build capacity of key stakeholders on accessing the Climate Change Adaptation Fund and Green Climate Fund, revise the national waste management strategy, and strengthen implementation of the national cleanup campaign. Promote cross-sectoral coordination among stakeholders for harmonization of change interventions. Develop restoration plans for degraded ecosystems in the country. Climate change management, Madam Speaker, in line with Malawi 2063, the government continues to prioritize environmental sustainability, and in an effort to achieve this, Madam Speaker, the government has developed a draft Article 6 framework to guide and regulate the implementation of carbon trading initiatives in the country. This framework will ensure that the country achieves its ambition targets under the nationally determined contributions, NDC, as stipulated in the Paris Agreement global goals that will see the Malawi projects have in various sectors. Madam Speaker, consequently, 47 carbon developers have been registered to embark on the process of developing carbon projects to sell carbon credits in various sectors, including renewable energy, renewable agriculture, water management, manufacturing, construction, and sustainable forestry management. Madam Speaker, the current 6 of the projects have been authorized to allow these investors to proceed with implementation of the carbon projects in the country. It is projected that these projects, Madam Speaker, will generate 5.9 million carbon credits after successful implementation and verification, which is expected to translate to around 60 million USD. Madam Speaker, due to the economic challenges the country is facing, government is implementing the Biodiversity Financing Initiative, and this initiative will unlock and identify financial solutions from all sources, including the private sector, to increase the amount of resources available for funding biodiversity conservation. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to report that the project has managed to develop a biodiversity financing plan which has identified 11 innovative solutions for funding biodiversity conservation, including payment for ecosystems services, carbon trade for biodiversity conservation, and mainstreaming of biodiversity in national budget. Madam Speaker, the August House may wish to note that during the 2024-25 financial year, the nation received funds in excess of $9.5 million realized from carbon trading on credits that were generated from projects that were implemented in the previous year. Energy sector. Madam Speaker, energy is a vital component of the country's economic growth and socio-economic development. With regard to development projects, Madam Speaker, some of the projects that the sector will implement in the 2025-26 financial year include the following: development of Mparamanga hydropower, Malawi electricity access project, Malawi Mozambique interconnector, battery energy storage system at Kanengo substation, and accelerating sustainable and clean energy access transformation asset. Madam Speaker, fuel is another strategic commodity required to drive the economy. In view of this, the government is strengthening the fuel procurement through the government-to-government arrangements to ensure a stable and sustainable fuel supply to reduce pressure on foreign exchange resources by streamlining transactions, trade and industry development. Madam Speaker, the government recognizes the importance of trade and industry development in driving economic growth and job creation. In the 2025-26 financial year, 14 billion has been allocated to the Ministry of Trade and Industry to promote industrialization, support small and medium enterprises, and expand export base markets. Madam Speaker, to combat illegal trade, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, in collaboration with the Malawi Revenue Authority, Malawi Police Service, and the Malawi Bureau of Standards, will launch a nationwide anti-smuggling initiative. Additionally, Madam Speaker, business inspections will be intensified to ensure fair trade and expand market access. Madam Speaker, to enhance trade and industrial development, the government will implement the following initiatives: develop special economic zones in Luntha, Lilongwe, and Nzuzu to boost industrial growth, train and register 100 cooperatives, equipping them to diversify into high-value sectors such as mining, construct value addition centers in Kasungu and Kalonga, and expand export markets through leveraging on existing market protocols for soy and groundnuts by securing new agreements for macadamia nuts. Youth and sports. Madam Speaker, the future of Malawi is in the youth. As such, this budget has also prioritized youth and sports development as a means of unlocking their potential and fostering economic growth in the 2025-26 financial year, and 30.9 billion has been allocated to advance this agenda. Madam Speaker, to promote innovation and creativity. Madam Speaker, I need the August House attention on this one. To promote innovation and creativity among the young people, the government of Dr. Lazarus Makathi Chakwera, through this budget, has allocated 2 billion to capitalize the Youth Innovation Fund to support young entrepreneurs and innovators. It is expected, Madam Speaker, that this provision will progressively be increased in the subsequent financial years to allow more youths to access the fund. In addition, Madam Speaker, I am also pleased to announce to this August House that government has increased the monthly stipend for graduate internship from 80,000 to 150,000. Madam Speaker, in addition to what I have talked about the Innovation Fund, I want to repeat that government has increased the monthly stipend for graduate internship program from 80,000 to 150,000. Madam Speaker, with regard to development projects, some notable ones include construction of National Indoor Sports Complex, reconstruction of Kamuzu Institute for Sports, reconstruction of BAT Stadium, construction of Achinyamata Center, construction of Youth Center in Nzuzu, and the National Youth Service. Homeland Security. Madam Speaker, government through the Ministry of Homeland Security and all the security agencies will continue to ensure safety and security of the country and all its citizens' life and property. In the 2025-26 financial year, Madam Speaker, the following projects will be undertaken: construction of new Luntha Police Station, construction of new premises of C Division of Malawi Police Service, development of Homeland Security Management Information System, establishment of forensic laboratory for the Malawi Police Service, and migration of police communication systems from analog to digital platform, and rehabilitation of police staff houses. Program for self-constructed and rehabilitation of prison cells and staff houses, revitalization of industrial workshops in prisons and sewerage ponds in prisons, lands and housing sector. Madam Speaker, in the 2025-26 financial year, the lands and housing sector has been provided with resources amounting to 39.1 billion towards land management and administration and housing services to the general public. This is aimed at ensuring orderly physical development across the country and improving access to housing and public infrastructure. Madam Speaker, in the 2025-26 budget, the sector will undertake the following development projects: construction of 10,000 security houses, construction of houses for people with albinism, national land reform rollout program, and public land infrastructure development in cities. Gender, community development, and social welfare. Madam Speaker, government continues to promote gender equality, community development, and social welfare through programs and policies that address the needs of general public, populations, and uphold social justice. In the 2025-26 financial year, the Ministry of Gender will implement the following projects and interventions: investing in early years for growth and productivity in Malawi, social cash transfer program, construction of early childhood centers, construction of library and lecture theatre at Magomero College, develop foster care guidelines and strengthen child protection services, support persons with disability through the Disability Trust Fund and vocational training programs, and promote elderly care services. Local councils. Madam Speaker, it is government's policy to strengthen physical decentralization so that local councils deliver public services that are tailored to the local needs in a transparent and equitable manner. And in this regard, Madam Speaker, the following are the key resource allocations highlights in the local councils: 33.5 billion for the procurement of drugs in the councils, 188.5 billion under Malawi Social Support Resilient Livelihoods, 43.8 billion under governance to enable service delivery, 42.5 billion under the Constituency Development Fund, translating to 220 million per constituency, 35 billion for the construction of city roads, 17 billion for the rehabilitation of district hospitals, 7.6 billion for the District Development Fund, 2.3 billion for the construction of water structures under the Water Resources Fund, and 1 billion for Infrastructure Development Fund. Revenue policy and administrative measures for the 2025-26 fiscal year budget. Madam Speaker, the revenue policy and administrative measures I am about to announce today have been carefully formulated to account for the current social and economic landscape while aligning with the government's strategic focus on sectors of the agriculture, tourism, mining, and manufacturing, commonly known as the ATM strategy. But before I delve deep into the specific measures, allow me, Madam Speaker, to make two key pronouncements. Firstly, Madam Speaker, I want to extend my sincere appreciation to all individuals and institutions that actively participated and provided invaluable insights during the pre-budget consultation meetings held across the country. Their feedback and suggestions remain instrumental in improving our tax system. And secondly, Madam Speaker, I wish to clarify that there is no import duty or excise duty on mobile phones. Only VAT is payable. And for businesses registered for VAT purposes, what they remit to the Malawi Revenue Authority is the difference between import VAT and sales VAT in some instances. They receive VAT refund when applicable. Now let me move to the tax and non-tax policy measures for the next fiscal year. Madam Speaker, in a departure from the tradition, the customs and excise tax measures I announced today will take effect from 1st April 2025 rather than at midnight tonight, as has been the case previously. This adjustment is intended to provide businesses and importers with ample time to factor in these changes when making key financial and operational decisions. Similarly, Madam Speaker, as per established practice, the income tax, value-added tax, and administrative measures I am presenting now will come into force on 1st April 2025, contingent upon the passage of the relevant bills by this August House and the subsequent assent by His Excellency the President. Customs and excise measures. Madam Speaker, Allow me to begin with a measure directly affecting your office, Madam Speaker, recognizing that the conditions of service for the Speaker, Deputy Speakers, and the Leader of the Opposition provide for duty-free clearance of 3 motor vehicles. The government is amending the relevant Customs Procedures Code, CPC, to formally accommodate this provision. Since these positions are held by members of Parliament who are already entitled to duty-free clearance of 2 motor vehicles, this amendment will grant an additional exemption, bringing the total number of motor vehicles to be cleared duty-free by individuals occupying that office to 3. Madam Speaker, in alignment with the ATM strategy, particularly within the tourism sector, the government is implementing a reduction in the applicable import duty excise tax on all materials imported for the construction of amusement parks. To facilitate this initiative, Madam Speaker, the relevant Customs Procedure Code will be amended accordingly. These measures aim to stimulate investment in the sector, enhance tourism infrastructure, and drive economic growth. Continuing with the promotion of the ATM strategy, this time for the agriculture sector, Madam Speaker, the government is amending the Customs Procedure Code for duty-free clearance of various irrigation sector items to include pump engine of any size. Madam Speaker, continuing with the tax measures, the government has observed that in some instances, hybrid electric vehicles attract a higher excise rate than their petrol or diesel counterparts. To promote the adoption of fuel-efficient hybrid vehicles, the government is implementing a significant reduction in excise tax rates as follows. For hybrid vehicles less than 8 years old, the excise tax will be reduced from 45% to 0%. For hybrid vehicles between 8 and 12 years old, the excise duty will be lowered from 70% to 35%. For hybrid vehicles older than 12 years, the excise tax will be reduced from 100% to 60%. These measures reinforce the government's commitment to environmental sustainability by encouraging cleaner and more energy-efficient transportation. Madam Speaker, while many of the measures outlined thus far reduce government revenue, we must also implement revenue-generating measures to sustain domestic revenue collection accordingly. Madam Speaker, the government is introducing a 25% import duty on motor vehicle engines classified under tariff headings 84.07 and 84.08, which encompass the engines for motor vehicles, locomotives, marine vessels, and tractors. However, I wish to clarify here that while complete units such as locomotives, marine vessels, and tractors are imported duty-free, this adjustment applies to engines imported separately. The objective is to ensure that while actual vehicles continue to benefit from duty exemptions, import duties are levied on replacement engines to prevent potential abuse of these concessions. Madam Speaker, we have observed a significant rise in the use of electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes. The World Health Organization has emphasized that both traditional tobacco products and e-cigarettes pose health risks, with the safest approach being complete avoidance of particular concern is an increased prevalence of e-cigarettes use among children and adolescents. Accordingly, to discourage the use of e-cigarettes, just as we do with tobacco products, the government is increasing import duty on e-cigarettes and similar personal electric vaporizing devices classified under tariff subheading 8543.40.00 from 10% to 30% under column 5 and from 5% to 25% under column 6 of the Customs Exercise Tariff Order. Madam Speaker, in the same vein, Madam Speaker, the government is introducing an excise duty of 200% on electronic cigarettes and other smoking-related products classified under tariff subheading 4545.40.00 and 9614.00.00. These measures to keep accessibility and deter usage, particularly among young people, while reinforcing public health priorities. Madam Speaker, in line with environmental conservation efforts, the excise tax on plastic carrying bags with handles will increase from 10% to 250%, thereby encouraging the adoption of eco-friendly paper bags. Madam Speaker, the government is amending Customs Procedure Code 405, which is used for duty-free clearance of health-related imports, to include title reading goods for the use of hospitals, nursing homes, clinics, surgeries, and dispensaries, as approved by the Principal Secretary for the Ministry of Health and Part C of this CPC, which covered essential goods for COVID-19 prevention, treatment, and management, will be removed following the World Health Organization's declaration that COVID-19 is no longer a global health emergency. Madam Speaker, regarding plastic packaging bags under tariff subheading 6305.33.00, several adjustments have been made. Firstly, tariffs will be split into 6305.33.10 for cereal packaging bags and 6305.33.90 for cement packaging bags, thereby allowing Malawi Bureau of Standards to ensure that only food packaging materials undergo necessary safety tests. Secondly, the PP woven cement bags under tariff subheading 6305.33.00 will be removed from the industrial rebate scheme for the cement and allied products manufacturing industry, as they are now locally produced and are available duty-free within SADC and commercial regions. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, the 10% surcharge on tariff subheading 4819.40.10, which covers paper cement bags, will be removed, as it was erroneously introduced on this tariff subheading, while a 10% surcharge will be imposed on PP woven bags for cereals, grains, and cement under tariff subheadings 6305.33.10 and 6305.33.90. These measures are designed to safeguard the local packaging industry by slightly increasing the cost of imported alternatives. Madam Speaker, lastly, on the customs and excise tax, the government will increase the customs agency bond under form number 123 from 1.5 million to 2 million. This adjustment is necessary as the bond was last revised in 2013, and an increase is warranted to account for inflation and changing economic conditions. This measure aims to strengthen compliance, enhance revenue security, and align with current fiscal realities. Value-added tax measures. Madam Speaker, one of the food that have become a necessity for most Malawians is bread or buns and confectionaries. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, the government does not impose value-added tax on most basic commodities to ensure affordability for consumers. In line with this policy, Madam Speaker, government is from today removing VAT on bread and buns and confectionaries to ease the financial burden on households, to promote affordable access to essential food items and support local bakeries and broader food industry. Madam Speaker, I want to make an emphasis on this one. Starting from today, because we have removed the VAT on bread, buns, and confectionaries, prices of such commodities should now go down. Income tax measures. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, The Priority Industry Scheme provides qualifying companies with a tax holiday of up to 10 years and duty-free importation of capital items, serving as a key incentive to stimulate investment and drive economic growth. However, concerns have been raised regarding unclear eligibility criteria and the inclusion of other critical sectors that could significantly benefiting from these incentives. In response, Madam Speaker, the government is introducing mega farms as a priority sector and undertaking a comprehensive review of the Priority Industry Scheme regulations. This reform aims to enhance transparency, streamline eligibility criteria, and ensure broader access to these incentives. This initiative aligns with the ATM strategy, and particularly in the agricultural sector, and is designed to encourage greater participation in priority industries while driving sustainable economic development. Madam Speaker, as I announced the good news of removal of VAT on bread, I would like also to make mention here, Madam Speaker, that we have also done similarly to second-hand clothes to make sure that they are affordable. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, you will have noticed that government is introducing various incentives, especially targeting the ATM sectors. With these types of incentives, Madam Speaker, it is evident that the ATM strategy has undeniably taken off. And however, Madam Speaker, I take this opportunity to urge the financial sector, particularly lending institutions, to step forward and complement this initiative by offering specialized lending products or facilities tailored to support the ATM strategy. It is deeply concerning, Madam Speaker, that banks, institutions that directly benefiting from farmers, agro-processors, and other players in the ATM sectors continue to impose the same stringent and exorbitant lending conditions as they do on other industries. This approach stifles growth and undermines the government's effort to transform these sectors an incentive to the banks. Madam Speaker, the government is exploring incentives to benefit financial institutions that develop tailored financing solutions in supporting the ATM strategy. In the same spirit, Madam Speaker, government is reducing the corporate income tax rate for companies incorporated outside Malawi from 35% to 30% to align with the treatment of locally incorporated companies and international best practices, thereby promoting an undiscriminatory business environment. Madam Speaker, government is also amending the marginal note to Section 127A of the Taxation Act from transfer to defraud and artificial transactions to transfer pricing and other arrangements between related parties to better reflect the section's intent. Lastly, on the income tax measures, Madam Speaker, government is introducing various offences related to tax systems management. This measure is intended to enhance tax compliance, curb illicit trade, and safeguard government revenue. Non-tax revenue. Madam Speaker, one of the most lucrative yet largely untapped sectors in terms of taxation is artisanal and small-scale mining. This sector is primarily made up of individuals and small groups engaging in mining activities using basic tools and minimal technology, often operating outside formal regulatory frameworks. To address this, Madam Speaker, the government, through the Mining Authority and other relevant stakeholders, is actively developing strategies to formalize the sector. A key initiative is to encourage the small-scale miners to form associations which will facilitate licensing, regulation, and compliance by bringing these miners into the formal economy. They will be able to contribute their fair share to government revenues through the payment of appropriate fees, levies, and taxes thereby broadening revenue base. Madam Speaker, as part of government's commitment to digitalization, significant progress has been made in payment systems. Starting in the next fiscal year, most government payments will be made via mobile money or online platforms. Madam Speaker, as I conclude on the tax and non-tax measures, I wish to emphasize that while election years often witness the removal of taxes or the introduction of generous incentives, such as short-term measures, can undermine the long-term stability and stability of our tax system. As you may have noted, Madam Speaker, this government has taken a responsible and pragmatic approach, avoiding short-sighted decisions and instead implementing only those measures that are beneficial to the nation in both the short and long term. These reforms are designed to strengthen revenue generation, promote economic growth, and ensure fiscal discipline. I therefore call upon all honourable members of this august House to support these critical tax measures as they are fundamental to the continued progress and prosperity of our nation. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, as I am winding up, I wish to inform this august House and all Malawians that government is optimistic that despite all the challenges that have been encountered, the economy will surely get back on the recovery trajectory. The dividends of our focus on enhancing production through strategic investments in agriculture, tourism, and mining will soon materialize. Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank our development partners, non-governmental organizations, civil society, faith-based organizations, the business community, professional bodies, the youth, and all the stakeholders for their unwavering support in the implementation of all the government programs. Madam Speaker, in a special way, let me thank all the officials from my ministry for their tireless efforts and invaluable contributions in coming up with this budget. Madam Speaker, I wish to urge my fellow honourable members to constructively deliberate on this budget. Madam Speaker, in the spirit of one Malawi, one people and one nation, I call upon Malawians together to ensure the attainment of our development aspirations in the spirit of one Malawi, one people and one nation. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister of Finance. Honourable members on my right, order please. Order on my right. Order please. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister of Finance. I'm seeing Honourable Member for Zomba Changalume.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for recognizing the people of Zomba. Madam Speaker, I'm standing on Standing Order 73 to clarify on the matter which happened yesterday. Madam Speaker, there were some videos that were shown in this house, and in one of those videos, I happened to appear in those video clips, and it was alleged that I connived with the guy who deflated tires for my fellow two honorable members from Zomba. So I would like to distance myself from that allegation. I've never done it. I cannot do it, and I will never do it. And Madam Speaker, I don't know the person who did that. And there's this golden rule. There's this golden rule in this life, that do to others what you'd want them to do to you. That's Matthew 7, verse 23. Madam Speaker, if you plant evil, you're going to harvest evil. So I know all these principles. There is no way I can do such a thing. So I wanted to clarify that on Standing Order 73. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Zomba Changarume. Honorable members, before I adjourn the House, I have a few announcements to make. Honorable members, can I have order on my right, please? Firstly, I wish to communicate on the distribution of the budget documents. I wish to inform the House that the budget documents, including the budget statement delivered graciously by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, will be made available to all members electronically soon after I adjourn the House. Secondly, I have a communication on cluster committees. Now that the budget estimates for 2025-2026 have been presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, the House will break into cluster committees for a period of 10 working days to scrutinize the budget estimates in committees in accordance with Standing Order 1372. This will be done from Tuesday, 4th of March to Friday, 14th March 2025. The cluster meetings will be held here at Parliament Building. Chairpersons of cluster committees should liaise with their committee clerks to ensure that stakeholders submit their presentations electronically and timely. There are 10 cluster committees and they are as follows. Cluster 1, Agriculture and Irrigation, Natural Resources and Climate Change, which will be meeting in the cafeteria A. Cluster 2, Health, which will be meeting in the Speaker's boardroom. Cluster 3, Social and Community Affairs and Local Authorities and Rural Development, which will meet in the Speaker's boardroom. Cluster 4, International Relations, Defense and Security, which will meet in the Members' Lounge. Cluster 5, Education, Science and Technology, which will meet in room 257. Cluster 6, Transport and Public Infrastructure, which will meet in room 255. Cluster 7, Public Accounts and Budget, which will meet in room 251. Cluster 8, Legal Affairs and Government Assurance, which will meet in the Members' Lounge. Cluster 9, Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprise and Public Appointments, which will meet in the COP's boardroom. Cluster 10, Industry, Trade and Tourism and Media Communication, which will meet in the Ministerial Lounge. Furthermore, I wish to inform you, honorable members, that it has been usually the case in the past, each member is allocated to one cluster. The criteria used to allocate the members to cluster committees is as follows. All members who belong to 2 local committees have been allocated to one cluster committee, corresponding with either of their committees. However, this criterion does not apply to members of the Public Accounts Committee who belong to only one local committee. As has always been the practice, all chairpersons and vice chairpersons have been allocated to the cluster committees corresponding with the committees they chair. All members of the Health Committee who are not chairpersons and vice chairpersons of other committees have been allocated to Cluster 2, which will address only health-related matters. Similarly, all members of the Education Committee who are neither chairpersons nor vice chairpersons of other committees have been allocated to Cluster 5, which will handle education, science, and technology-related issues. Additionally, All members of the Transport Committee who are not chairpersons or vice chairpersons of other committees have been allocated to Cluster 6, which will handle matters related to transport and public infrastructure. All members of the Public Accounts Committee have been allocated to Cluster 7, which comprises the Public Accounts and Budget Committee. The detailed information regarding membership and specific votes for each cluster will be circulated to the members. Members may also wish to note that all proceedings and the clusters will be beamed live on Parliament television. I therefore request all members to dedicatedly attend cluster committee meetings and ensure that your names are captured in the attendance register. Failure to do so will mean that such members will be subjected to Standing Order 41, Part 3. Honourable members, I thank you for your attention. I now adjourn the House until Monday, 17th March 2025 at 2 p.m. after the cluster committees have... No. Adjournment in us coming back as a plenary, because we're breaking for clusters, we have to state the date that a plenary is going to meet. So as plenary, we are meeting on Monday, 17th March 2025 at 2 p.m. after the cluster committees have scrutinized the budget. House adjourned.